Welcome to the Behind the Wealth Show podcast. We have a very, very special fill-in guest today for Roger. His name's Jonas Everett. Jonas, thank you for being on the pod today.
You're welcome, Elias. I'm excited to be here.
Good.
It'll be a great podcast or show or whatever you call it.
Whatever we're calling it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got some interesting stuff to go through today. We'll talk about moves that folks can make if they're planning to retire in 2025, which is next year. We'll talk a little bit about some seasonality in the stock market with, there's a lot of October seasonality data to look at. We can talk about how that might be impact with the election coming up. A couple other topics. There was the port strike, so that I'm sure people are worried that that's going to help support some inflation and being able to get goods and stuff like that. And we also have some lessons from a legend in the investment business, Vanguard founder John Bogle. So just talk about 3 lessons from John Bogle, and I think that's where we'll start the episode today, because I know you have, I think, if I remember right, you're a pretty big fan of Mr. Bogle and the things he's been able to accomplish. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think it's important to start with some common sense basics with so much going on right now in the world. If you look at the media is going bonkers on steroids almost right now. You have the unrest in the Middle East. You have the election coming up. You have inflation. You have all of these things happening, and the media is just in a frenzy right now. So we'd like to start today with some common sense basics. And Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, it's kind of neat. He was really onto something. There's always a great debate in our industry, Elias, that in order to make money at investing, you have to buy the right stock. You hear that a lot of times. You have to get lucky and find the right stock. I should have bought XYZ stock when I had a chance 20 years ago. I should have bought this stock when I had a chance. And ultimately, Jack Bogle, even in college, his thesis was basically you need to try to own basically all of the stock market if you can. Some type of an index. And the easiest way that I can remember is him calling it a haystack. And ever since his college days, he's been claiming that haystacks versus needles. You're better off owning a haystack. You're better off participating in the entire market, what the stock market does as a whole. And really, it's been super successful if you look at the track record of the S&P 500. But the posts continue. Jack Bogle, even though he passed away in 2019, he's got really, I think it's called Bogleheads, and there's about 120,000 of these registered members, and they make these posts. They've made about 6 million posts, and there's a top 3 lessons that Jack has just for common sense investors. That these have been around for about 50 years, but they still kind of shine true today.
So it's pretty remarkable, right? That he's got a whole community of people that even have a nickname, the Bogleheads.
Absolutely, yeah.
And really, when you start to think about people who have probably accomplished the most for investors, I don't know if there's a single person that's done more for the retail investor than John or other. He also goes by Jack, but Jack Bogle. It's kind of hard to make an argument that someone else has done more for retail investors just by introducing. He really popularized ETF style investing. Understanding the cost and the fees you're paying associated with the investments that you have, and basically made the S&P 500 readily available to all investors. Quite the accomplishment.
Oh, absolutely. I think that he really leveled the playing field and made it maybe easier for the average investor to own indexes. If you look at his top three, kind of his common sense tips on investing, the first one is, Jack Bogle said, ask yourself, am I an investor or am I a speculator? And we talked about that when people look at investing, I think before, they always felt that they had to find the right stocks to buy. And what Jack is saying is, if you own an index, then you can be an investor. And with all the crazy things going on, if you look at the last we've had three downturns the last 7 years. If you're a speculator and you get out every time the stock market drops, like 2018, we had the Christmas crash. 2018 dropped 19.8%. If you got fearful then and you got out of the market, and then you decided a couple of years later to get back in, well, that was the COVID crash. And that was the worst time to get in. And let's say that, I'm going to get back out. This COVID thing is horrible. I'm going to get back out and wait to get back in as a speculator. And then you get back in 2022. Well, that was the bear market. But if you were just a long-term investor, even starting in 2018, you would have had a positive return in the S&P 500. So I think that's really great advice. Don't be a speculator, be an investor.
I think in addition to market timing, an area where we will see retail investors make mistakes with speculating, and a lot of times that comes with chasing outperformance or trying to just believing that I'm going to pick the next top 10 stocks of the S&P 500, where I think speculating, one, timing the market is a form of speculation. I think you can also have a lot of opportunity costs that you missed out on by speculating on individual stocks and then being wrong. Because I think most people that I know that are actually trading stocks, one of the first things they tell you is, one, how hard it is to be good consistently at it. And the other thing is hard to be good consistently. And then also they'll share with you a lot of the ones that they've picked that haven't worked out. And a lot of traders, a lot of times their long-term investments, they're not trading with that money. They're trading with money. It's almost like a hobby.
Right.
For them.
And I think the people with wealth too, Elias, that they don't want to have anything to do with trading and speculating. I think of a story. One of my best customers, very successful customer, his son is in the financial business, and I asked him, well, why don't you let your son invest your retirement accounts for you? Why are you picking Premier? And he said, my son's a market timer. He's a speculator. He's
really. Is this a new person, or is this a longer term?
He's a stock trader, a longer term customer. But I was always curious after 10 years because his son is successful. You can be successful at it, obviously. But for the rest of us, I think for the average investor, owning haystacks and not looking at needles. Jack Bogle's second quote, great common sense here with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. He claims that the greatest enemies of the equity investor or the long-term investor are expenses and emotions. And I'll kind of throw this back to you, Elias. I think this quote's a little outdated. Because when I got into the industry, I think expenses were a bigger issue than they are right now. Thanks to the microchip and the computer. I'll give you an example. When somebody wanted to do an investment with me in the 90s, when I first started, I rode my dinosaur to work, and then I roped it up and left him standing out back. But it was 7.5%. To do a mutual fund when I started, and then it went back down to 5.5% up front.
Wow.
And now, thanks to the computer and the microchip, I use the big screen TV analogy a lot. My brother Scott bought a big screen TV in 2013. I think he paid like $3,300 for it. My other brother Jason and I and Scott, we were like lumbering this TV up Scott's stairs, and it weighed like about 300 pounds, and it took us all afternoon to put it on the brackets. Well, what do you see now at the at Walmart when you walk in?
Well, the big TVs, but one, they're smaller than they used to be, and two, I think the prices actually come down on them. Well, they're probably more expensive, but
actually, yeah, the price is a couple hundred. You can get whatever you want for $200-300.
Yeah, there's more options.
Yeah, there's more options. So I think the thanks to the computer and the microchip, the cost of investing has come down. So the big emphasis is, the biggest enemy of the long-term investor are emotions. And I think that still holds true today.
I think I know, but to me, the emotions of investors, that really, the pendulum swings from fear and greed and kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
Because what we see is, you have a really great 12 months in the market. And over the last 12 months, everything has been great. Well, for people who are retired and maybe living off their retirement assets, maybe a good opportunity to raise some cash for future income, right? But do you ever run into a conversation where, hey, I think we should raise some cash in your portfolio, just take some chips off the table. We know we're spending this money in the next couple of years, and people will respond, well, things are going good. Let's just wait and see.
Right.
Is that logic coming through, or is that someone's tendency to be greedy coming through? And then, and we obviously help people work through that and give them reasons and rationale why we're doing what we're doing. But I think the most successful investors, and Jack Bogle would probably echo this. He passed in 2019, but successful investors, they don't make investment decisions with their emotion, right?
Yeah, and this happens to every investor. This happened to Jack Bogle. There's a backstory about Jack Bogle.
I want to hear this backstory. I don't know if I know this one.
He was having heart problems. He had, obviously, he's a super successful financial wizard, so he had most of his, or if not all of his net worth in the S&P 500. And I think this was somewhere around the early 2000s where he was going in for heart surgery. He actually moved his personal account from the S&P 500 over to the bond index. And the reason that he did that was he was emotional, not for himself. He was emotional for his family. In case he didn't make it out of the surgery, he felt that his family would be too emotional about having the entire net worth in the S&P 500. So I think this is easily, you're talking about taking chips off the table. If Jack Bogle can do it when he's going into heart surgery, I think that everybody should consider doing it, especially when you look at the S&P 500. It is up over 50% since January of 2023. But so taking chips off the table, I think that's a good idea. Elias, I get a kick out of how we have new customers take risk tolerance questionnaires.
Yep.
Well, the risk tolerance questionnaires, when the market's up, people want to take more risk, right? There's no problems whatsoever. So
yeah, everything's going great.
Yeah, everything's going great. So the risk tolerance, people are more aggressive this year than they were with the risk tolerance questionnaires that we had in 2022, the bear market. And that's just an emotional thing. If money and investing isn't emotional, then really what is it? I mean, it's 100% emotional.
Yeah, and I think the difference is when you've done a good job investing and then you're going to rebalance your portfolio. To me, rebalancing it's like having an apple tree and you're going to harvest some apples. When the market goes down and then on the other side of things, you make a decision with fear to get out or to abandon your plan, well, now instead of harvesting some apples, you've cut a limb off of the tree. And I know one of your famous quotes is "Don't mow your flowers down," right? So I think the difference when the market has done well, you're not mowing your flowers down, you're not cutting off a limb, you're going to harvest some flowers, harvest some apples to keep things just perpetually going in the right direction. And, and a lot of that has to do with having a good plan. And I know Jack Bogle has some quotes about the third one we were going to talk about. The greatest enemy of a good plan is the dream of a perfect plan. So stick to the good plan.
We see this all the time, right? We have our customer reviews where we have 8 investments are up, and then 2 of the investments in a standard review are down. What's the average customer want to talk about the whole meeting?
Well, you're probably going to get some questions on, hey, what are these two stinkers here? But
Right. And yeah, that's one of the things, and this is really backed up by evidence, this statement. I love this statement of progress versus perfection. You look at Warren Buffett, he's considered the greatest investor of all time. I think Jack Bogle made it an even playing field, I think, for the average investor. But Warren Buffett is a huge fan of the Jack Bogle philosophy. And even Buffett himself, talking about haystacks, Warren Buffett said he's owned 400 to 500 stocks during his lifetime, and he's made most of his money on 10 of the stocks.
I can absolutely see that.
Arguably the greatest investor of all time actually failed on about 480 of his stock picks during his lifetime, but he hit home runs on 10 of them. And then Charlie Munger, who's passed away too, was a co-founder of Berkshire. He agreed with Warren. He said, as far as the Berkshire performance, if you remove just a few of Berkshire's top investments, its long-term track record is pretty average. That's what Charlie Munger said. So back to these haystacks, you're hoping over the long term there's some home runs in these haystacks, and I think that it's never going to be perfect.
It never will. It never will be. And the only way, you can make strategic decisions, data-driven decisions, but at the end of the day, there's no crystal ball, right? This business would be a lot easier. Investing would be easier if there was a crystal ball, but there's just not. And I think at times you do have to understand that there's never going to be the perfect path, but as long as you're sticking to a good game plan, you're sticking to your strategies, that's how you're going to be rewarded over the long term. That's how you be successful as an investor.
And so, I think that you do a great job, Elias, with new people and maybe some of the younger people too. You start them. It's almost like a driving lesson. You start them, you get them excited with opening up an account and adding to an account, and it kind of reminds me. In our household, our oldest kid is autistic, and teaching an autistic child how to drive, there's no such thing as perfection. You start off the first week.
Hold on, is there perfection ever? I've never taught a kid how to drive yet. My oldest is 9, but is there a perfect way to teach a kid how to drive?
There's not a perfect way, but you start with driving. You just start with the first week, and you open an account, or you start driving the car. You get the basic lessons down, and then the more you continue to invest, it's kind of like driving. We had maybe 40 curb checks the first week, and then the next week it was down to 20 curb checks. And then the third week, it was down to 10 curb checks and, a couple of fixed tires. But I think that it's important that people just get started, and ultimately people can be a whiz at this long-term investing thing.
They can. They can, and if you're staying on track, because with a good plan, that's going to be one of the best things to help you. And a younger investor, the best thing you can do is get started. And over time, as your life gets more complicated and things happen, you can always, right, kind of peel back the layers and figure out how you're going to manage. But you do need to have a good plan. So can I ask you a couple other questions here? Have you heard about the port strike? The longshoremen going on strike?
I have. We talked about that on AM 600 radio. And what's your thoughts on that? I mean, you mentioned that that might spike inflation again. And I honestly, in my personal opinion, I don't blame them one bit. I think that anytime, if you look at I have this chart, income adjusted for inflation since 1970, basically has not gone up at all for people. So I think that, in my personal opinion, I think that there's a lot of Americans feeling the pinch of inflation right now. And if they want a pay raise and they have a critical job skill like the port employees, I think that I'm power to them. I think that they should try to get as much as they want. But that's my personal opinion. What do you think it's going to do with inflation?
Well, that's a good question. I have a couple thoughts on it. I think one, if all the port workers, if they feel like they're not making the wages they should be, they're doing the right thing. They're part of a collective bargaining agreement. They're part of a union, so they're going on strike so they can negotiate for better wages and benefits for their families, and they should do that. I honestly, I think it's scary to think about how it might impact inflation. I don't know if it will, though. And the reason I say that is consumers are pretty close to tapped out already. So if we're already having a hard time affording the goods and the things we need, especially groceries, because I know every article I've read on this is talking about how this could cause groceries to go up even more. Well, if people can't afford to pay more, I mean, I understand there could be some inflation, but I think a key difference between this happening now and say this would have happened in 2020 or 2021 is we haven't just print trillions and trillions of dollars and pumped it into the overall economy. We're kind of on the other side of that where people have spent up that money. Credit card debts are back to all-time highs, so consumers are already kind of tapped out in a way. So I don't know how much impact it could have on inflation. I mean, I'm sure it will make things a little bit more expensive. I don't know how drastic it'll be, because if people can't afford it, they just can't afford it. Then you're not going to buy any. So
yeah, I think that, and I talked about this on AM 600 radio. I mean, what can the average person do now, maybe in the Midwest? Because I call it a sandwich index. You get in a hurry with you have a full family of kids, Elias. The sandwich index is, if you're not planning, if you get in a hurry and you go out, for the Everett family, it's 2 sandwiches, chips, and no drinks. You're looking at $28 for that bill. If the Randalls get in a big hurry and do something like that, that's you can double that bill. But I think that
easily. I was just at Jimmy John's the other day, and I love that sandwich shop, and it was $10.
Right.
So for $10, how many more sub sandwiches am I going to eat? I'll tell you the answer, not a lot.
Right.
Like I'm at that's 10. I mean, for 10, when it's $10, I can go to the grocery store and get a week's worth of sandwiches, probably for $10. Now, is the bread I'm going to use as good as the good French bread there? No. Is it as convenient because someone else has to make it? No, it's not. But I honestly felt kind of foolish.
Right.
I just spent $10 on a sandwich. That's not good.
Well, it happens to everybody. And, what can the average American do now? I think we talked about we talk about that spare tire situation, your emergency fund. If you're not doing anything right now, you're gonna feel the pinch from your emergency fund. You're gonna see some money missing from your emergency fund just by the fact that everything costs more. It's going to continue to cost more. So I'm advising my customers add 15% to your spare tire, your emergency fund right now as just an inflation hedge, so you're not caught off guard. And again, what you're buying there is just financial confidence, right? If you lose your job, instead of, or if you get sick, instead of only taking a few days off and have to get back to work before you break the bank, you have 6 months of living expenses just in that spare tire. And I'd really like to see people get to the point to where they're buying a second spare tire too. And, this might be an opportunity for people in case the market goes back down to buy back in and to clip some coupons. But, yeah, I think I call it the sandwich index. It's quite something, isn't it?
It is. So, Jonas, that's a good segue into our final topic for today to talk through. I know people that are in their last year of working, anytime they get to the transition to retirement, they start to worry a little bit. So the other day, we put out a blog on the company website, premieriwm.com, discussing what people can do now to get ready to retire in 2025. And I think all the clients of our firm know, and we know, that you can never plan too early, right? So having a good financial plan based on your goals and the things you want to accomplish is the best way to really put yourself in a situation for success. But I think more immediate, what are kind of some things people could do now, right? A financial plan sounds like this big project, and it is in a way. But if you're working, this is your last year of work, and one of the first things was reassess your retirement budget. I think that kind of lends to what you're talking about, where maybe increase your emergency fund. We've had record inflation, so that means everything's more expensive. Does your emergency fund reflect that, right? Did you give yourself a little bit of raise in that the spare tire that you like to call it to help with that stuff? What are some other things, just budget items? How can people reassess their retirement budget? What are things people should be doing today if they're going to retire next year in 2025?
Well, we always like to ask Elias that question when people are coming up on retirement. Walk me through your first year of retirement. What's it look like for you? And
taking all my grandkids to Disney World. I'm going to golf 18,000 times.
We're going to talk spare tire.
I'm going to get coffee every day.
I had a customer say, we're going to start home remodeling. And, so we had to create a second spare tire situation with an extra $15,000 to $30,000
for a remodel.
Yeah, for a remodel, and we were.
That's a small remodel nowadays,
that's a
right?
small remodel nowadays. We were not even hitting the first spare tire, the emergency fund, and I think that basically having somebody to talk to about. Like you said, it's not a full-blown scary thing, the financial plan. We start with the basics. Okay, everybody usually in retirement has a three-legged retirement stool. The first
what are the three legs?
It could be a pension, if you still have a pension. You have a Social Security, and then you have your money. Well, if you have...
so I'm going to have a two-leg stool.
You're going to have a shorter leg.
Older.
I'm going to have a shorter leg. I'm going to be missing one leg. Probably I don't have a pension. So we all start as Americans going into retirement. Let's look at those three legs. Let's see if one leg's shorter than the other leg. And let's kind of fill in the gaps. And I think that you and everybody else here does a really good job with the Premier Bucket strategy. But just having somebody ask you to walk us through the first year in retirement, walk me through the first year in retirement. Everybody's going to have a different story, and I think that it comes back to planning earlier than later, but adding to that emergency fund. for your first year plans is very important.
It is, because there will be things, retirement, when you ask someone to walk me through the first year, they're going to tell you like kind of their vision for their time and how they're going to spend it. I think on the other side of that, key areas that budget-wise I have to focus on, healthcare, housing, and lifestyle costs, like those things are never going to go away. So those are always going to be items that are ongoing in people's financial picture. And another thing I've been thinking about with some families that I have and have been working with, the last year you work, it's also your last opportunity for contributions.
Yep.
So if you can, might as well maximize the contributions that year. It's really your last opportunity to get money into those investment accounts. And, the nice thing is, once it's in the account, you can invest it however you want, right? And you could have money market funds, you could have stock market funds, you could have bond funds. But getting it in the account, that's really the first step. And then you can decide what you're going to do with that money and how you need it and how you're going to take it out for income. So I think the last year you work is a really good opportunity to just max the contributions one last time. And I also think you could also reduce debt, right? Reduce debt before you retire. I feel most successfully retired families have very little or no debt. But what are your thoughts on reducing debt prior to retirement date?
Completely, 100% important. And I think that back to the contributions too, Elias, we always say on the radio show, as an average investor, we're always forced with two decisions in our lifetime. What's easier to do, buy low or sell high?
I know the answer to that.
Yeah. What's easier for you?
It's easier to buy low.
Right.
And here's why I say that. If you think about how most people save money, it's through their 401k, their workplace plan, just systematically over time. Okay, so if you start at 25 and 40 years later, you're 65, and all you ever did was put money in your 401k, what were you doing the whole time? Buying low.
Buying low, yeah.
Most likely. I mean,
right.
The market at your age at 25 compared to 65 should be higher. History has shown us it's going to be higher. So you've been buying low the whole time, but now you're making the transition to retirement. So you probably need a different portfolio, and it's time to maybe sell and do some different things. That's harder to do.
Yeah,
even this last year, it's not always the easiest to get people to take some chips off the table and kind of reallocate the apples and harvesting those apples and those flowers.
Yeah, most of us are going to be done buying low in retirement. We're not like Warren Buffett over here that has $100 billion or $100 million in cash or whatever. I'll have to look at the cash statement, but he always has a huge cash position.
He's going to be okay.
Yeah, he's going to be okay. But most of us are done buying low, and I think that that's a great idea, Elias, that people really have to look at rebalancing in retirement.
It is. And what about your thoughts on reducing debt before retirement?
100%.
What's typically your recommendation?
100%. I mean,
ideally you're going into retirement with no debt, right?
Well, don't do what my neighbors are doing, and they go out and get new cars every year, and
hopefully your neighbors don't listen to the show.
You have to position yourself to where you're going to be on a fixed income. Do you want a car payment and a mortgage on a fixed income? I mean, it's back to the common sense philosophies. You want 2 car payments, a mortgage payment, and a vacation payment on a fixed income in retirement. I don't think the math is going to pencil out for people.
Yeah, that math probably doesn't pencil out. Or as the kids are saying now, that math doesn't math the way it's supposed to.
That math doesn't math.
So, and I think a final step, maybe not a final step, another good step as you're going to transition, review your investment portfolio and asset allocation. I know when we help families retire, and there's really kind of 2 phases to investing. The phase where you're accumulating, that's putting money in every week or 2 weeks whenever you get paid and buying more investments. And then you transition to the withdrawal phase or distribution phase, as people say. And we subscribe to the bucket strategy. We call it the Premier Bucket strategy. And for us, we have a liquid bucket, so that's going to cover your cash, living expenses, right? For the next 1 to 3 years, typically, we're going to have an income bucket, a growth bucket, and a legacy bucket, which is more optional. Legacy planning is not the most important thing for every family, but families that are, then there's typically a strategy for that. Maybe could you provide some insight into the Premier Bucket strategy, how that's been successful for you and your clients over the years, and the things you like about it? Would you mind talking about that?
Yeah, you take a new customer or any customer through the bucket strategy, and usually people that have money saved up in investments have some type of stock and bond mix. So give you an example, some family friends the last time, they were nearing retirement. They had a 90-10, so 90 stock and 10% bond mix. And I basically took them through the bucket strategy, and we all decided collectively that going forward, they wanted to have a 50-50 mix. And we were able to put half of...
which is significant portfolio change.
Yeah, and we were able to put half in bucket number 2, and then that was maybe 3 to 5 year money, and they felt a lot better coming out of the meeting having designed a new bucket strategy, because they felt like if the market does go down, they have some money in bucket number 2 that we could always work the dial back to more aggressive investments, but they felt really good about actually doing something before the market goes down. The market hasn't gone down yet. So I think that the bucket strategy is just a nice working dial for people, and it's just it's a comfort level for people. They come in and they get one done, especially if you think you've done a decent job saving money. I think that it's a no-brainer to come in and get a bucket strategy done.
I agree with that, and I think it does provide a lot of peace of mind for people. And you made a good point there. You can always add risk to your portfolio up to a certain point, and you can always take risk out, kind of depending on the environment and what's going on, and just and how it makes you feel too. So that being said, if there's any listeners listening or watching the YouTube, you can reach us at premieriwm.com. You can subscribe to our social media channels if you would. Jonas, any final thoughts or anything you want to wrap up with today?
No, I'm really proud of the average investor not mowing their flowers down. The media is going bonkers right now, so people are staying invested, and that's a great job.
It is a great job. I'm proud of the average investor too. So everybody, thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time on the Behind the Wealth Show.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, and financial or tax advisor prior to investing. Premier Investments and Wealth Management and LPL Financial do not provide tax advice. Please consult your tax professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. There's no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. Rebalancing a portfolio may cause investors to incur tax liabilities and/or transaction costs, and does not assure a profit or protect against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is not a guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of the strategies. Investing involves risks, including possible loss of principal.